Hello, heathens. I'm Megan Angus, and this is Spinning the Wheel podcast. In this weekly audio ritual, we explore the 8 seasons of the witch's wheel of the year, and we discover how it is so much more than 8 Sabbats. We weirding witches time travel through holy days, festivals, and celestial events connecting our celebrations and magic to the past, present, and future. Our cackling fills the night as we take our turn gathering the wool, wielding the distaff, and spinning the wheel. Hello, good people of Earth, and welcome back to another episode of Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your ever-changing host, Megan Angus. And this week, we are officially approaching the end of Lughnasadh season, the end of Virgo season, the end of summer. And we are collectively about to cross the threshold into fall. But before we get into all of that, let's do the preamble. You know how it rolls here. You know how we do it. What have we got coming up? First and foremost, we have our next class coming up, which is going to be Mabon, a 6-week guide to fall equinox, which is Thanksgiving. This holiday has lots of different names, and we are going to be discussing the modern history, the ancient history, the astrology, the astronomy, geo events that will be occurring during this season, as well as folklore and tradition in terms of festivals and ritual work and ceremony and celebration utilized by pagans, witches, and heathens, past and present. And just like we do here on the podcast every week, we will also be talking about what everybody else is doing at this time of year and how all of these seasonal elements are reflected in folk traditions and celebrations around the world and throughout time. You know, it's what we do here on the podcast and in the Megan Angus, I don't know, empire? I don't know if I can call it an empire yet. No one works for me. It's just me. So I don't know if it's an empire yet, but I think you get what I'm saying. We're going to be going through all of that and more in the next class, which will be September 19th, which is a Tuesday. This will be a live stream on my YouTube channel, which is just Megan Angus Witch on YouTube. And you can subscribe to me there on YouTube. You'll get a notification when that class is going live. Please join us for the live stream and heckle me in chat. We love it. Folks that are subscribed to my Patreon at the Venus level and higher, that's $9 a month and higher, will have access to the workbook, the 7 to 8 week calendar that goes along with that, with all of the festivals and celebrations past and present, access to the digital altars, the digital spells, playlists, and all of the sundry materia that goes along with the classes. What else? Oh yeah, folks at that level also get access to all of the other things that I have taught that I have recorded classes of that go along with that season, that Sabbath that we're passing through. So folks will also have access to my 2-hour lecture on the Justice card and so much more. So join us over on YouTube if you just want to hang out for the live class, but join us over on Patreon if you want to support this work and get reported. Yeah, sure. Get rewarded for supporting this work with a whole bunch of cool stuff. And then our next class after that is going to be September 28th, also a Tuesday. This is going to be our September Tarot Circle. Tarot Circle is a monthly community building event for all of my Patreons who are subscribed at any level. This is a free class. Sometimes it's a big old lecture. Sometimes it is a group event. And I tentatively have this class planned as the collective reading for fall, but we'll see. I'm being pulled to potentially do something else. As it is. Pretty normal for me to kind of not have it together. So just be winging it right up until the last second. So it's gonna be a surprise for everyone to be included. Okay. So, if you can't make it for the live Mabon class, it will be uploaded to YouTube. It will also be uploaded to all of our podcast platforms to watch or listen to for the next several weeks. The Tarot Circle is, again, free for all patrons to attend, and folks who are subscribed at the Venus level and higher will have access to the recording if you can't make that class. So many ridiculous thank yous to my patrons who make all of this possible, / it's your fault. If you're looking for somebody to blame, it's those yahoos who keep sending me money every month and being like, no, girl, you know what you're doing. Just keep going. So, so thank you to those goofballs over there. I do offer tarot readings, astrology sessions, magical consultations at all, which you can sign up for through my website. Patrons get discount codes. Patrons at higher levels get free readings with me every month. You can also head to my website and read lots of stuff, watch lots of other videos from the past that I have made public, and you can sign up for my irregular newsletter, where you will find out some stuff every now and then. Everybody's inboxes are absolutely inundated with stuff. So while I am not as consistent as I would like to be with the newsletter, I also don't send it out very often on purpose, because you're already getting just piles and piles of content. So, here's a little bit of good stuff from me every now and then, that kind of thing. Head to my website, sign up for that good stuff if you are in the mood. This has been a very long preamble. I think it's more than enough. Let's get into what we are talking about this week, which is Lughnasadh / Mabon season, new moon in Virgo, lunar week 24 by some lunar calendars, as we have discussed here on the podcast many, many times. Those lunar calendars start and stop at different times all around the world throughout time. You can have a new year just about at any time of year, this week included. We've got a very big new year to talk about. But after that incredibly long preamble, I'm also going to say this famous last words. If you know, you know. In theory, this is going to be a shorter podcast, because much of what I would be talking about in this podcast, I will also be talking about in our upcoming Mabon class. And so I don't want to give it all away, save some of it for the class. So we are going to be skimming over some things that we normally would be diving a little deeper in, either because we've already talked about it or we're going to be talking about it soon. Okay. So a lot of what we're going to focus on this week is actually our astrology of this week, which is cool and relatively helpful astrology this week. I know I also am a little suspicious. It was so funky and so narnar for so long that, these last few weeks where we've had very little astrology and the majority of it has been predominantly helpful or benign, very suspicious. Very, very suspicious. Waiting for that other shoe to drop. I don't know about I know. It's all sweetness and light here. No, that's something else. That's not witchcraft. In witchcraft, we prepare. So let's talk about what we have going on this week. Our lunar week starts Thursday, September 14th, 2023 at 6:39 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day / the next day for everybody else around the planet, with a new moon in Virgo at 21 degrees. And nothing, the moon is not aspecting anything exactly. The aspects are close and kind of wide. But what we have going on is a trine to Uranus retrograde in Taurus at 22 degrees, a trine from, oh, where did I put it? Let me look at my notes. A trine to Jupiter at 50 retrograde, I should say Jupiter retrograde at 15 degrees of Taurus, um, a trine to Pluto retrograde at 28 degrees of Capricorn, and an opposition to Neptune retrograde at 26 degrees of Pisces. So, first, let's kind of ground ourselves into where we are. We are in the sign of Virgo. We are in the literal last week of Virgo and the last week of Lughnasadh season, the last week of summer. This lunar week that we are in is literally going to take us right up to the day when we switch over into the next season and the next Sabbath. And so in Lughnasadh season, we are dealing with power and maturation and all that stuff that we've been talking about for the last 8 weeks. When we are moving through Virgo season, we are refining the material process. We are making the adjustments, the changes, the corrections, the edits that we need to our material world process, whatever that is. If that's moving stuff around the house, or if that's, reorganizing what we have, and that's built out of the experience that we're having at this time of year where summer is ending. The harvest is happening in theory and literally for lots of people around the planet. Um, and we're about to go into overdrive with the harvest as we step into Mabon season and fall proper. And so this is the time to kind of get the little details squared away while the light is strong, while the weather is still relatively nice. This is that time of year to like take that opportunity and start to get things shifted towards fall and ultimately winter. And as we've talked about in the last couple of weeks, personally, I think that that's where Virgo stereotypes come from, that sense of being uptight and that sense of being very like hyper detail oriented. Well, that's that part in all of us, because everybody has Virgo somewhere in their chart. That's that part in all of us that remembers the wheel turns and stuff changes. And so we need to adapt, we need to modify, we need to adjust, and we need to recalibrate and reorganize as we go. As we have been hanging out here in Virgo season, we have had Mercury retrograde in the sky. And Mercury is not only the ruling planet of Virgo, but it is exalted in Virgo, and it has been retrograding through Virgo. So if there ever has been an opportunity for us astrologically to work with a pattern based in refinement, adjustment, modification, review, editing, this has been it. And there are parts of us that can feel like that sort of work is really not as important as work where we are obviously gaining ground or we are obviously producing results. So this retrograde and this portion of our Lughnasadh season, this portion of Virgo, and our turn through this portion of the wheel this year in particular has given us multiple really cool opportunities to adjust, modify, refine, edit, recalibrate, all of those types of words that speak to the adjustment and the mutability of the sign of Virgo. It's here to help us change shapes. And so now we have our new moon in Virgo, and we get to have this really cool moment of thinking about what is new in my refining process. What new thing do I need to bring in? What new thing is being revealed in my material world stuff through this really intense, granular, review oriented work that I've been doing. Our new moons are a seed. They are a start. It's an instigation, an initiation, a birth, a starting up of a thing, a poking at a thing, an opening, an awakening to. Any of that type of imagery is appropriate for us when we're hanging out with a new moon. And so this new moon in Virgo is like, yes, let's kick off a new iteration of our refining process. This lunar cycle that is kicking off with this new moon, first off, is going to bring us into fall and into Mabon season next week. And where this lunar process ends a month from now with our next new moon in Libra, that kicks off eclipse season. So we truly are stepping into this very cool moment to check the details, check the receipts, check the kits, and make sure they have all the parts that they need. All of that type of stuff. Really, really helpful. And as I was saying, there can be parts of us that feel like when we're not making obvious forward progress and we're not producing obvious material world results, that we're not actually making any progress. And I hope that this Virgo season and this Mercury retrograde that we've been experiencing has changed your mind about how that can be sometimes, and that sometimes sometimes what I will often say is there is no such thing as backwards movement. We are always moving forward. Sometimes we're moving in a way that looks like we're moving sideways. Sometimes it looks like we're moving really slow, but it's all forward progress. And so this has just been a really cool opportunity for us to refine, edit, all of that. Okay. Now, this moon is, as I already mentioned, trining Uranus, trining Jupiter, trining Pluto, and in opposition to Neptune. So when we have all of those trines, they are places where everything feels, moon, where everything feels like it's all working the way it's supposed to be. We don't necessarily want to question it. Everything seems fine. It's working. Let's just go with it. And so the trine to Jupiter is showing that this is a really fantastic time for kicking off initiatives, kicking off plans, stepping into doing like crowdfunding, if that makes sense for any of the work that you're doing right now. Starting in your corner, starting with your people, and kind of branching out to the rest of the world. Then we also have that trine to Pluto and the trine to Uranus. And those are going to speak, I think, a little bit more to the opposition to Neptune. But again, the trines are really lending a like, yes, this is all feeling appropriate and feeling how it's supposed to be. Deep feelings, the unconscious and the subconscious kind of getting stirred up a little bit. Uranus wants to depart from the norm, wants to shake things up on the domestic front a little bit. And throughout this week, with some of the other astrology that we have, we want to think about how the moon kind of like lays down the vibes for the next, 6, 7, 8 days until our next major lunar phase. The phrase that pays rolling through this next week-ish might be, don't expect the expected, roll with the changes. And again, thinking about this deep refinement period and this deep period of editing and adjustment that we've been in for a few weeks now. Yes, Mercury retrograde, but also the fixed stars that we've been passing through and some of our holy days that we've worked with have also been like, hey, this is a great time to check the orientation. And so here is this trine from Uranus that's also like, roll with the changes, look for the unusual, look for what, step off the beaten path, jog yourself out of your routine and do something a little bit different. And with the trine, we might be feeling like that's appropriate, important, and helpful. The trine from Jupiter, we're optimistic about that stuff. We're open minded about it. We're feeling expansive around it. And again, Jupiter in an earth sign, the moon is in an earth sign, Pluto is hanging out in an earth sign. That is a lot of earthy energy. And so this also is a really fantastic new moon for kicking off real world, meat space, physical plane, material world stuff, projects, initiatives, conversations, whatever it is. If it's about making something happen in the real physical world, this could be a really great time to initiate that type of stuff. Um, with all of these trines and even the opposition, we might be experiencing some breakthroughs. That's a word that often comes up when we're hanging out with Uranus. Um, like all of the little tiny pieces may start to find their places. We can really get lost in the sauce in Virgo season sometimes. It's like, I'm alphabetizing the silverware drawer for the seventh time this month. Am I okay? Like, you're fine, honey. You're fine. Um, but, but, but a lot of that silly, what may have felt like really silly, little tiny granular work, that stuff might be starting to fall into place and starting to like reveal something deeper, which is pretty cool. Um, last but not least, I want to talk about this opposition to Neptune. We're going to have other Neptunian stuff throughout the week, and this might be the strongest part of the transits or the aspects from the moon, or to the moon, however you want to look at that. Oppositions to and from Neptune can feel very murky, confusing, cloudy, foggy, nebulous, hazy. And when that's cool, that's really cool. And when that's not, it's confusing and it's frustrating and it's, easy to make a mistake and it's da 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 da. So, this entire week, let me lovingly remind you, drink some water, make sure that you're checking in on your body throughout this entire week. Lots of earthy energy, but still, Neptune transits can represent points in our process where we get really detached from remembering to take care of the body. So go for a walk, eat some food, put some snack bars in your bag or whatever. Just and an extra water bottle, just so you're like ready for the phase out. If you suddenly drift from Earth, drifting far from home. The Neptune opposition can feel very romantic, very fantastic, very dreamy. But with all of this Earth energy, it could feel, this whole week might feel like it is a dynamic tension between reality and the fantasy. That might be how it plays out instead. Um, uh, Also, with oppositions to and from Neptune, some of the ooky shadow stuff can come through because it's an opposition, right? So not only might we be feeling murky and confused and foggy, like we might have a hard time concentrating, we might have some inferiority stuff come up. We might have some guilt stuff come up. We might have some victimhood stuff come up. So pay attention to that. And, just with that and like the trine to Jupiter, I also would say that this isn't necessarily a great moon for utilizing recreational substance, and you know what that means for you. But this is probably not the best moon for that. Or if you are doing that, do it maybe under supervision, or do it knowing that you need to have a very strong anchor to be able to kind of pull you back from the cosmic sea of, whatever it is that you are imbibing. So that's really what's up with this new moon. Last new moon of summer, last new moon of Virgo, only new moon of Virgo. Last last new moon of Lughnasadh season. This moon is carrying us into fall, and this lunar cycle is carrying us into the eclipse cycle. Last thing I think, well, last things. I I always say that, right? That it's like, wait, here's 40 more minutes of stuff. Last things to say about this moon. One, um, There is a really incredible comet passing by Earth right now. And you got to look it up online, and it's almost too late to see it in some parts of the world already, but it is passing through the stars of Leo and Virgo right now. And what cool timing to have that very auspicious celestial visitor roll through and roll through those constellations during this time of year. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. In fact, this time it might actually just be a coincidence, but we're magicians. There's no such thing. So, very cool. Might be a neat time to do a little research on how did ancient civilizations think about comets? Were they blessings? Were they curses? Was this an auspicious time? Was it a sacred time? Was it a terrible time? How did comets play into people's spiritual and magical practices in other times? Just cool stuff. Okay, so uh, for this new moon in Virgo, Um, my number one piece of advice, and I'm going to say this a couple more times in this podcast, but my number one piece of advice for this new moon in Virgo is be alone with yourself. Ooh. In whatever way you can. On the new moon is fantastic, but really anytime this week, um, in whatever way you can. No phone, no internet, go be alone. If that is soaking in the tub for an hour and just chilling by yourself, cool. If you can like get out of the house and go to a cabin or go camp or something overnight by yourself, rad. Don't bring stuff to read. Literally go be with yourself. Go be by yourself, go be with yourself. You might bring a blank journal, and or you might bring your journal that you've been writing in for some time now and go back and read some of those old entries and reflect on that stuff, and work on whatever comes up for you. Think about, how do you need to reorient, edit, recalibrate, mutate, change shape to point yourself in the best possible direction for the next portion of the wheel and the next season that we are about to step into. What do you need to get out of your way? What do you need to call in? What do you need to foster and generate? What do you need to sustain and hold fast with? And what do you need to edit or let go of or dismiss? Because we're going to be doing all of those things in the next 3 months. So think about that stuff. Just reflect on that. You might also do some divination. You might look at your natal chart. You might pull some tarot cards or throw runes or bones or shells or whatever systems you like to work with, whatever metaphysical technologies make sense for you. But this is a great time for all of that stuff. But at the core of it, inner work, reflection, being at peace, being still, being silent. One of the key elements of magical practice around the planet is having the ability to come to stillness within yourself and having the capacity to be empty. Having the capacity to be able to just sit with yourself and listen to your own wisdom voices. It's difficult, and it is profoundly important in magical practice, in witchcraft, shamanism, all the stuff around the planet, big time. Okay, for our lunar body work with our new moon in Virgo, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, preparing for action the large and small intestines, the spleen, and the pancreas. And the spleen and pancreas are both in charge of filtering stuff and breaking stuff down, producing hormones, but ultimately deciding what the body is not going to keep and breaking down food and minerals and things like that into smaller parts. Very Virgo, right? As I say every single week, not a doctor of the human corpus, a doctor of the cosmos. So don't listen to me, a raving lady on the internet yelling about things. Go check with your trusted health advisor if you are wanting to incorporate any of this information into your health routine, and you can always work with the metaphor. So, are you having trouble digesting something that's going on in your life, right? Is something that happening in your life that is making you queasy, right? Is hard to digest, is making you feel ill. The metaphor here works too, right? So what do we need to do? And for our plant body work, we have two different approaches. One approach is when the moon is in Virgo, don't do anything to your plants at all. Instead, do some research, look at what your plant needs to thrive. You can do that. But for the folks who do things with and to their plants when the moon is in Virgo, we are cultivating, we're cutting wood, we're harvesting for drying and storage. You might spin your plants a quarter of a turn diasyl or sunwise to promote equal growth all the way around the plant. Um, Grafting, layering, taking cuttings. If we're planting anything, we're planting annual crops that bear their fruits or leaves above ground, especially our leafy crops. And we could also be planting cereals, grains, melons, cucumbers, celery, cabbage, spinach, etc. Okay. We have no other astrology for this day, so I'm just going to scooch directly to Friday, September 15th. And our astrology of that day is Mercury stations direct, hey, at 8 degrees of Virgo. On the same day, the sun in Virgo trines Uranus retrograde in Taurus at 22 degrees. And then later in the day, the moon enters Libra. Okay, so Mercury stationing direct in Virgo, hooray. Um, Although, for me and lots of other folks that I've talked to, generally speaking, this has been a relatively cool Mercury retrograde. Not true for everyone. Definitely have talked to a lot of folks who have had some very overt, not cool Mercury retrograde events happening. Trouble with their car, break-ins, trouble with money disappearing and not coming back, things like that. Very mercurial. But now that Mercury stations direct, now we enter the resolution period of whatever we've been dealing with in the Mercury retrograde cycle. And so if Mercury has transited anything in your chart during the retrograde, it is going to transit that stuff again for a third time before it heads on and moves to some other place in the sky. Um, Mercury direct moments can be moments of breakthroughs, revelations, the other shoe dropping, the final piece of information finally falling into place. Things that have been confusing begin to make sense. Stuff that was missing starts to be found. Stuff that was hidden starts to come to light. That can be some of the type of stuff that we see when Mercury stations direct. Um, Gossip can start to flow again if it has been stopped. Communications in general might be easier once Mercury stations direct and starts to move in a forward direction. It is also going to be emphasizing all of that Virgo stuff that we've been talking about. So, more of that. Okay. And if we haven't had enough Virgo energy, let's have a little bit more. Sun in Virgo, trine Uranus retrograde in Taurus at 22 degrees. So here is another moment where we're getting big emphasis on that earth energy, manifesting things in the physical world, working on our physical world process, our material world processes. The conversation between Virgo and Taurus is what environments do I work in, and what kind of people do I work with, and what kind of work do I do, and what sort of unions am I involved in, and worker solidarity movements might I be involved in that is going to directly address my physical world needs. Virgo. to Taurus. And Taurus to Virgo is like, and how can I make that more beautiful, sumptuous, delicious, smell better, prettier, more comfortable? Right? Virgo is like, my work area is utilitarian, and Taurus is like, no, no, no. No, first off, where is the velvet couch? What is happening right now? Secondly, we're going to need a coffee cart in here with a lot of pastries. um, and so, Taurus and Virgo both want to work hard. Virgo is willing to sacrifice comfort and aesthetics for efficiency. Taurus is not. Taurus is willing to sacrifice efficiency for aesthetics, comfort, and, general deliciousness. So, having the sun in Virgo, trine Uranus retrograde in Taurus, there is another opportunity here, very much like the Mercury retrograde or Mercury direct, breakthroughs, revelations, having a new view of the self in these environments. Um, this is a really great day for studying stuff that feels like it's going to be inspiring, but not studying things that feel like they're going to require a lot of concentration and like sit here and be patient. Uranus wants to run around, it wants to move the body, it wants to feel the electricity and feel the excitement. So this really could be a wonderful day for, in whatever ways are safe and healthy for you. Really giving the body a good solid workout. Watch your nervous systems if that's a thing for you. That's the one place where Uranus can get a little haywire, literally. But this is a really great day for calling in a new approach to something between the Mercury direct and the trine between the sun and Uranus. This is a great day for calling in new stuff, new information, a new viewpoint, a new direction, a new approach. Wonderful timing coming directly after our Virgo new moon. Wonderful timing as we are stationing direct and moving forward now with the adjustments that we have been making during this portion of the wheel. Really cool to have this helper moment astrologically. Yeah, kind of don't have anything negative to say about it, like, at all. Just cool, helpful. But remember what I said before with the new moon. If we're looking for the expected, if we're looking for the tried and true, if we're looking for the predictable or the routine, this is not the week for that. This is the week for looking for the new, the weird, the unexpected, out of left field. I've never tried it that way before. I've never seen myself in that light before. I've never thought to describe myself that way before. That stuff. That's what's up with this week. Okay. So that's our astrology for Friday, September 15th. Then Saturday, September 16th, Venus in Leo squares Jupiter retrograde in Taurus at 15 degrees. Jupiter and Venus hanging out, generally speaking, it's a party, it's a vibe, it's a jam. Everybody's getting free drinks, everybody's having a good time. There's always a basket of fries on the table, and they're hot, and the aioli is kicking. So it's generally a great time. What do we need to pay attention to? It is a square, right? So what do we need to pay attention to? When Venus and Jupiter get together and they start hyping each other up, it's overdo it city. So if we're not paying attention to ourselves, this is a Saturday night, right? If we're not paying attention, we might overdo it a little bit. We might overspend. We might overeat. We might over imbibe. We might over promise as well, right? Maybe we're paying very close attention to our wallet and we're being a good kid over there, but we've got 3 people at the table that all have had fantastic breakthroughs and ideas this week with our cool astrology. And we're like, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. No, you can't. Stop it. You and I both know you should not be saying yes to that many things. So quit it right now. So that's really what we get from the Venus square Jupiter moment is we can overspend, we can overpromise, we can overdo it. Otherwise, it's a bop. Otherwise, it's a great time. It's a fantastic time. Go have some fun. And whatever you're doing, do it with flair. This is a great time to pull that outfit out from the back of the closet that you've been saving for something. This is the weekend. Go party, have fun, be safe, mask up if it's appropriate for you to do so. There's new rounds of boosters coming out. hop on the booster train, kiddos. Let's keep it cute, right? You know, I'm not gonna not beat that drum. But that's really all I have to say for that astrology for Saturday, September 15th. It's quite lovely. Um, Sunday, September 17th, the moon enters Scorpio. And so then that brings us to Monday, September 18th, with our waxing crescent moon in Scorpio. So let's get into that. This moon on Monday, September 18th, let me tell you some shit. No, it's not that bad, actually. 7 p.m. on the dot, Pacific Standard Time, later in the day / the next day for everybody else around the planet. We have our waxing crescent moon in Scorpio at 10 degrees. And this moon is opposing Jupiter retrograde at 15 degrees Taurus. That's really the only aspect that it's making of note for me. Now, that's interesting because we're starting out the week with the moon in a trine to Jupiter. And then a few days later, we've now moved into an opposition with Jupiter. So there is a little bit of a sense of like the Jupiter energy starting to get a little out of hand as we move towards the end of the week. So pay attention to that. What do we have with a waxing crescent? Well, the waxing crescent is the first lunar phase after the new moon. We're going to get one every single time. And our metaphor that we work with for this portion of the lunar phase is the sprout. There is an element of expansion. And the real visual for you here is at the new moon, we have a seed under the soil. At the crescent, the waxing crescent, one or two little sprouts are pushing their way out of the soil and up into the air. Can we push up and out of the past and really initiate the new cycle? That's actually what we're working on at the waxing crescent. So it's a dynamic point in the process. There's a little struggle here, and there's a little tug from the past. And, you know, it's like, are we going to grow? Are we going to do something new here with this new lunar cycle that we're in? Or are we just going to repeat what was going on in the before? Okay. And when we are hanging out with our waxing crescent in Scorpio, Raven Caldera has this to say about this moon. I'm just going to go directly to the book, Moon Phase Astrology. Raven Caldera calls the crescent moon in Scorpio the blood moon. And on the blood moon, Raven Caldera says, we study darkness. We search inside our minds and hearts for the fears and pain that we bear. But more importantly, we compare them to the fears and pain of other people and of collective society. We study the blood rights of the people, any people, and how they work to make dysfunction functional. Gathering together for the purpose of telling bloody tales would be appropriate here, as would a personal ritual to work with one's shadow side. Now, that is relatively spooky and kind of heavy compared to the very like sweet, light, BS that we've been talking about for the astrology of the majority of this week. But things are about to get a little weirder with our astrology in the next couple of days. So, having this moon show up now is once again very helpful for us because at the core of what this moon is asking us to like work on or think about is to think about, as I read out of the book, thinking about our fear, thinking about our pain. And in what ways do we compare that stuff to that stuff in other people? And, let me say, first off, we all do it. And secondly, we shouldn't, but we do. It's not a suffer Olympics, right? Nobody's going to get a gold star for suffering the hardest. Um, and, uh, and trying to judge yourself in that comparative way or judge other people in that comparative way can really lead you into some gnarly places, right? But again, at the core of what this moon is really asking us to focus on is you know, understanding how different other people's darknesses can be from our own, and yet still acknowledging that we all experience pain and stress regardless of who we are. And so, uh, remembering we all have our dark places that we go to. We all have our spooky stuff that we dally with. We all have our baggage. We all have our ook. We all have our bullshit. Um, and that to me is like really at the core of what's going on with this waxing crescent, is like a reminder of like, oh yeah, it's not just me struggling to get away from my past. Everybody is, in theory, struggling to get through their stuff and work on their stuff and move past their stuff. But again, with our waxing sprout, our waxing crescent sprout moment, it really is, how can we pull away from the past? And so here I think the question is, am I going to hold on to my regressive beliefs? Am I going to hold on to my unhealthy coping mechanisms? Am I going to hold on to stuff that I learned or developed in the past to deal with ooky stuff that I was dealing with, people, places, things, events? Am I going to hold on to those things, or am I going to be brave and try to transform them into something else or let them go altogether? That's how I am choosing to interpret this moon. Okay. Um, for our waxing crescent moon in Scorpio, for our lunar body work, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action the organs and the processes of pleasure, reproduction, and waste management, aka sex and death, which is exactly what Scorpio would like to be dealing with at all times. Don't even try, Scorpios. Don't try. We know you're weird and we love you for it. So it's good. Um, but yes, vajazzling is a holy act this week. I'll say it. Uh, the heading to the local colon cleanse. That is a holy act this week. So enjoy. And for our plant body work, I'm serious, y'all. I'm dead serious. For our plant body work, we are planting for sturdiness. We're planting anything with a waxing moon in Scorpio. We can transplant, graft our annual flowers, fruit, and vegetables that are all viney and bear crops above ground, stuff like corn, tomatoes, watermelons, zucchini. This is also a great time for harvesting seeds and roots that we intend to use for replanting, versus harvesting seeds and roots that we intend to use for medicine or food or magic. Um, this is a great moon for checking our water and our irrigation systems, whether it's our house plants or our lawn or whatever it is that we're dealing with. Great moon for grafting, for layering, taking cuttings, and if we're planting anything, planting annual crops that bear their fruits and leaves above ground, as I mentioned for the new moon, especially the leafy crops, cereals, grains, melons, cucumbers, celery, cabbage, spinach, etc. And for Monday, September the 18th, we have no other astrology of note. Moving to Tuesday, September 19th, we have our sun in Virgo moving into opposition with Neptune retrograde in Pisces at 26 degrees. So we started the week with the moon in a wide opposition to Neptune, and now the sun has moved into direct opposition with Neptune. And as I mentioned, this is where things are going to get a little murky. If the week hasn't already been, the lunar week hasn't already been a little odd, we're kind of starting off this calendar week, Tuesday the 19th, with some opportunities for confusion, nebulousness, haziness, weirdness. Now, in a best case scenario, you have time, you can float, you can be daydreamy and romantic and fantastical on this day. Wouldn't that be lovely? Because even though it's an opposition, it's a really awesome time to kind of be transcendental, kind of leave the body for a little while, be dreamy, be floaty, hang out in the etheric realms, the astral realms, doing that kind of stuff. Obviously, with our good magical anchors and protections and all of that, um, but we might be feeling extra sensitive on this day. So if we're doing safe magical work, cool. But if we have to be here in the physical world and like dealing with other people and problems and stuff like that, this again could be a day where we're feeling very sensitive and like super touchy. We may need to put ourselves in timeout and have a good cry on this day. We may need to put ourselves in timeout and just like do some deep breathing to kind of come back. Whatever you need to do to kind of ground yourself on a day like this might be really helpful if you're feeling frustrated. Like, literally go sit down outside on the ground or go hug a tree or hold a heavy rock or a brick even in your hand to kind of bring yourself back into the physical world and into the here and now to be able to deal with whatever it is these mortals are demanding from you. Um, and this could be a day where specifically you might see some stuff in people that is hard to understand at this time. And that is an important piece of information given that we've just had a new moon and we've just had Mercury station direct and we've just had this Sun trine Uranus. Like, all of these points are sort of pointing to information being revealed. And this Sun opposite Neptune is saying we might also be at a point in our pattern or process with somebody where stuff is revealed and we don't really know what to do with it. We don't know entirely what it means. We don't entirely understand it. And so what I would say is, if it's possible to, hold off on judgment until you get more information, have more clarity, aren't feeling so sensitive, right? Today might not be a super day for trying to process very logic oriented stuff. It was just too hazy, too nebulous, too foggy, too confused. I'm going to remind you again, when we've got our Neptune transits, make sure you're checking in on your body. Move your body in gentle, safe ways, but come back to the body. Remember to have some snacks. Remember to drink some water. Come back from the etheric realms, cosmic wanderer. Come back. And finally, last but not least, actually, no, that's still not the end of the week. This is a very long lunar week. Wednesday, the 20th, the moon moves into Sagittarius, and we have the sun in Virgo trine Pluto retrograde in Capricorn at 27 degrees. Now, it's Pluto, right? We had our moon 2 days before in Scorpio, calling us up on our power stuff and our wound stuff and all of the spooky stuff that can come up with Scorpio. And here we have 2 days later kind of a follow-up with a meeting between the sun and Pluto. They're like, all right, well, you've had a few days to think about that. We'd love to know what your notes are. and and so what can be present with a sun trine Pluto, it can be a very helpful transit. We might find resources that we've been looking for. We may be able to tap into subterranean power reserves. We might have a chance to appeal to people in positions of power on this day and get a beneficial result from that appeal. We might just be really up close and personal with power dynamics, but in a way where things are more obvious, or we like what's happening, or we're getting access to something that's beneficial to us, or something along those lines. That's how this Sun trine Pluto can play out. Okay. And last but not least, we have Thursday the 21st. So this lunar week literally bringing us directly up to the butt crack edge of summer and fall equinox. It's very inappropriate, but hi, welcome to the podcast. And we have no astrology of note on Thursday the 21st, except we have some astronomy of note in that Mercury will be reaching its greatest western elongation and is a beautiful morning star, rising just before the sun is rising. And so that's just, if you happen to be up super early in the mornings, take a look before the sun rises to see if you can see Mercury coming up over the eastern horizon. Those of us here in the northern hemisphere, beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. Okay, so that's our astrology for this week. We are going to be moving from uh Sun in Virgo and a Virgo oriented lunar cycle into the sun being in Libra and working with a blend of Virgo and Libra energies as we move into the rest of the lunar cycle. And we will talk about that more in the following weeks. But just to kind of get you rooted in that, again, Sun in Virgo, we are refining the material process, and our new moon in Virgo is initiating a new view of refining that material process. The waxing crescent in Scorpio, bringing us an opportunity and a tug from the past around healing, rebirth, shared resources, power dynamics, and specifically how all that stuff comes up for us in wounding, hurt, funky stuff, funky baggage that we've carried over from past experiences. Okay. So now, very, very quickly, I'm going to skim literally over some of our holy days for this week. Much in the way that we talked about in the last few weeks, we have chunks of holy days uh, happening this week that are all in league or in alignment with the stuff that we have been doing in Lughnasadh season and the stuff that we're about to do in Mabon season. So, for example, from September 14th to the 20th, we have the Pilgrimage of the Black Madonna in Switzerland. On September 15th, we have the Feast of Mater della Rosa, celebrated by our Catholic and pagan ancestors and friends. And then we also have on September 17th, the Feast of St. Hildegard of Bingen, celebrated by our Catholic friends and ancestors, but kind of like by weirdos and artists around the world. We also, from our Byzantine friends and ancestors, have the Holy Day of Saint Sophia. From our Babylonian friends and ancestors, we have the Day of Gula. And so all of these festivals are in alignment. Oh, I can't forget this. Catholic friends and ancestors, we have the birth of the Theotokos. So all of these festivals are moments of witnessing the goddess in this slightly shadowy aspect, this darker aspect that is not it's a darkness of not being able to see her entirely, and that's on purpose, aka there are parts of her that are unknowable. And in this aspect, in this week in particular, if you haven't been listening to the podcast, in the last several weeks of the sun moving through Virgo, every week we've seen these collections of festivals from the ancient world and the modern world of witnessing the goddess as producer of something. And so in this week, she's sort of the producer of it all. And she's still standing in that place of being a producer of wisdom, a producer of enlightenment, a producer of knowledge. But a lot of these characters, a lot of these iterations of her, again, also have this darkness about her, literally the Black Madonnas. And that darkness inferring the parts of her that are unknowable or not understandable by us humans, that we just sort of have to witness the mystery in those places. And they are hearkening to her holding that threshold as we move from summer across the equinox into fall and into officially the dark half of the year. From equinox point going forward, the days will officially be shorter than the nights. And so there is that energy here too. We have some other festivals in this week dedicated to goddess energy as well. Oh, one of the ones I totally meant to mention was we have the um Iennium Cereris on September 18th, and then on September 19th we have Mundus Patet number 2, both of these from our Roman friends and ancestors. We've talked about the Mundus Patet before, earlier in Lughnasadh season, and what this is for the ancient Roman world, this was a sacred opening of a subterranean chamber that was like an inverted bowl, and it had a round top, and it basically was meant to mirror this world, but as the underworld. uh, when we look through the various Roman festivals, as we have been talking about for, oh, I don't know, the last 3 years or so here on the podcast, we see this theme happen over and over again here in the harvest season, where the dead ancestors, the beloved dead, are sort of invited up from below ground, and they really are thought to be pushing the crops up, that they are actually responsible for the abundance that we are experiencing here on the material plane. And so this is the Ianium Cereris is a fast for Cereris or Ceres, and then the Mundus Patet is another sacred opening of this subterranean chamber dedicated to Ceres and the other grain goddesses, Terra and all of them out there making the world produce the stuff. But again, the darker iteration of her, the underworld iteration of her. So sitting very tightly with all of that. Other stuff that we're seeing this week, the Opet festival from our Egyptian friends and ancestors. This is the acknowledgement of fall equinox, and a witnessing of the life slowly starting to come back after the heat of summer. Um, we have, what else do we have? Sorry, digging through my notes. Dig. We have from our Hindu friends and ancestors Ganesh Chaturdathi, which is a festival dedicated to Ganesha and his abundance oriented stuff, his knowledge oriented stuff, his capacity to open the way and remove obstacles. Um, from our Hindu friends and ancestors, we have Nuachal from September 20th to the 26th. This is yet another festival dedicated to the harvest, dedicated to abundance. Um, so many festivals this week specifically dedicated to goddess as dark, unknowable wisdom, festivals dedicated to the autumnal equinox itself or the abundance of the harvest, and festivals dedicated to the beloved dead, the dead ancestors, the death of other deities. I think we had our last beheading of Saint John the Baptist was last week, but this week, September 14th, we have from our Islamic friends and ancestors the death of Muhammad. So again, this same thing, same day, we have festivals dedicated to Anubis from our Egyptian friends and ancestors. Um, so big emphasis on this, and we have seen this collection of festival types running throughout Lunasa season. There's a competition element, there's a sacrifice element, there is a one leader overtaking or besting or even killing or sacrificing another leader, king, god, whatever, etc., etc., etc. So that's all happening this week. Yeah, I'm like, is there anything else I want to mention with that stuff? No, that's all happening this week. With our new moon, we have from our ancient and modern calendars new months kicking off. And so this is from our Jewish friends and ancestors, and we'll get back to this in just a second, Chodesh Tishri. From our Roman friends and ancestors, Calende October. From our Greek friends and ancestors, Bodromion. Are all months that are starting with this new moon. And with this new moon in Virgo, running from September 15th to 17th, is Rosh Hashanah, the new year for our Jewish friends, neighbors, lovers, community members, and ancestors. This is the Jewish year 5784. Big time celebrations kicking off. And some beautiful festivals. This is the day of shouting or blasting, where the shofar is blown. This holiday usually is determined by the new moon closest to the autumnal equinox. This certainly would be the new moon closest to the equinox. Um, Rosh Hashanah is a beautiful festival that is community oriented. Family members get back together. Lots of folks go home and visit their old neighborhoods. There's eating and drinking and partying and having a good time and listening to music and just generally celebrating Jewish culture and all of that really great stuff. Um, okay. So that's, I think, everything that we're going to talk about for our astrology, for our moon stuff, for our holy days this week. Because again, we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff in the class. And so I don't want to surprise me. I don't want to talk it to death. Yeah, I know. Shut up. Shut up. So, for our tarot card for this week, I think working with the Hermit is very appropriate. I would also say that hanging out with the Magician card is very appropriate. The Hermit connects us to the sign of Virgo, new moon in Virgo. The Magician connects us to the planet Mercury. Mercury just stationed direct in Virgo, where it is the ruling planet and exalted. So I think working with either one of or both of those cards is very appropriate this week. The Magician, in calling in that wisdom, calling in that advice, calling in those breakthroughs that we talked about with our astrology. The Hermit, calling in that solitude, calling in the silence to be able to hear the deep wisdom of our own process and the advice that we're asking for from those guides that we like to work with, right? For our witchcraft, I definitely recommend on this moon in particular resting as much as is possible. This is also the week for us to start clearing off any of our altars or work tables from around the house that are dedicated to summertime activities and Lunasa activities in particular. You might have other working altars around your temple, around your altar, or excuse me, around your house, around your room. We don't necessarily need to clean off and reset those, but anything dedicated to summertime, anything dedicated to Virgo, anything dedicated to Lunasa season, it is appropriate to start to break those altars down this week and get them ready for Mabon. As well, you might utilize this week for gathering whatever materials you want to use for making your altars or doing your celebrations or whatever you're going to do for Mabon. As I say all the time, and I have a giant piece about this up on Patreon, yes, there are magical observances, ritual observances, celebrations, festivals, yada, 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 that do kind of have to take place at a very particular time on a particular day. For example, if we want to honor the moment of the equinox, we kind of have to do it on the day that it's equal night, equal day. And we can look that up online to find out exactly when that's going to be for your local area. But working with the energy of Mabon in general, we have like 6 weeks to do that, at least 4 weeks to do that while we're cruising through the sign of Libra. But technically, we have all the way up to October 31st to work with our Mabon energy. So do not feel like you have to jam it all in on one single night. Do not feel like you have to do it on exactly the 23rd. If the 23rd is not convenient for you, do it earlier, do it later. Again, if you're working magic that requires that equal night, equal day thing, well, you kind of have to do it during that time period. But all of the rest of our observances absolutely can take place over the next several weeks. That's my opinion. I know that there are witches out there and pagans out there that are like, absolutely not. You got to do it on the right day. Well, baby cakes, how are you doing your math? How are you making sure that you're doing it on the right day when you're celebrating a festival from 5,000 years ago? I'm just asking for a friend because I make these calendars and I want to make sure that they're accurate. So, this is a great week for breaking down our old stuff and clearing space and acquiring the parts, getting ready for the new energy, setting up our fall and autumn work areas and altars, setting up our Mabon season altars, setting up our Libra energy altars, all that. Okay. And for our journaling prompts this week, I want you to think back around over this last year. We are in the final hours of Lughnasadh season. And I want you to think about 3 different experiences from this year where you helped create or foster beauty, creativity, success, or spreading love in any way. That's what I want you to journal about. I want you to think about where you have helped to create or where you have helped to foster wonderful things happening in the world on a gigantic or infinitesimally small scale. I don't care. But I know you did some cool shit this year, so quit it. Don't. Don't try to pull that shit with me, because I know. And you know that I know. So just write it down. Okay? Okay. That, my friends, is our stuff for this week. I hope to see you in class. I hope you join us for that. Once again, massive thank yous to my patrons for supporting me doing this. It's ridiculous. If you ever have any questions, comments, suggestions, if you have advice for me, because even though I've been doing this for a while, I'm still learning how to do a podcast. I'm still learning what it is that I'm doing for you all. we're still finding that out. Send me some advice. Yes, really. I'm listening. I may not take it, but but truly, if you have any questions, any comments, you can send them through your podcast platform, I think. But you can also always send me an email through my website. Happy end of Lughnasadh season and happy just about Mabon season. Here we go, you all. This is officially the tipping point on the roller coaster as we begin the downhill slide into the dark half of the year. See you in the dark, witches. Blessed be.